Hey everybody, my name is Sensei Anthony, and this is going to be the first of a series of videos to help my students stay fit and keep training during this corona pandemic. I encourage everyone to watch the videos, share with your friends and family as well, because maybe at the end of this we can have some new students. I'm going to put a little sign up here, if you can please zoom in on that. There's my email addresses on there. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Again, I'm representing the American Vadha Kempo Academy in East Brunswick, New Jersey, and the style that we teach there is called American Vadha Kempo. And American Vadha Kempo was founded by Grandmaster Vadha in about the 1970s. I was introduced to the system in 1986 when I went to Monsignor Farrell High School on Staten Island and was taught by Bill Monk. So some of the upcoming videos I'm going to go into a little more detail about the history of the system, our belt system, the rankings, and things like that. So the focus for today's video, again, I always like to say I'm a big advocate of Stephen Covey and the 7 habits of highly effective people. And one of the habits that he talks about is begin with the end in mind. You always need to know, what are you trying to accomplish before you set out on a task? So what I'm trying to accomplish with these videos, as I said before, is to make sure that my students are staying fit, they're keeping up with the material, they're still practicing until they're able to come back to the dojo for formal lessons. And in the same breath, like I said, by sharing it and passing it on, maybe we'll have some new students after the smoke clears, okay? So with that being said, first I'd like to ask my son Matthew to come on up here, and I'm going to let him do a little demo on some of the techniques so you can see at what level you can achieve. So Matthew is he's 12 years old. He's been studying American Vadha Kempo since he's about 4 years old. Yeah. So he's what's considered a junior black belt. So I'm going to have him demonstrate a little bit of the hand and foot techniques, and then I'll get into the lesson for today. Okay. So let's start off, Matthew, with right cross. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. Hook right cross. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Roundhouse from the right. 1. Nice. 2. Good. 3. Good. Spinning hook. Nice. One more time. Go. Good job. Thanks, Matthew. Okay, so Matthew demonstrated a little bit of hand techniques and foot techniques. So the focus on today's lesson is going to be about stance and some closed hand strikes. Okay, so the first thing, stance is the beginning and end of everything. Okay, if your stance is no good, your punches are no good, your kicks are no good, your self-defense is no good, everything starts to circle the drain, as I like to say. So stance is everything. In the version of American Vadha Kempo that I teach, I basically teach 2 different stances: a right hand dominant stance and a left hand dominant stance. Okay? And both of those stances, again, we need to know both of them, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to play to the majority because most people are right-handed. So we're going to do a right-hand dominant stance. So the first way to think about starting it is, if you want to start with your feet just past your shoulders, okay, a little wider than your shoulders. Then I'm going to take my right leg and I'm going to put it out at a 45-degree angle to my lead foot, okay? And if you notice, my feet are staggered. I never want my feet to be on a straight line. Okay, we'll get into that in a moment. So I want my feet to be staggered. I want my knees to be bent. I never want to have my knees locked out, and we'll explain that in a moment as well. So my knees are bent. My weight distribution is 50-50, meaning my weight is equally distributed over my lead leg and my rear leg. I'm not leaning forward, and I'm not leaning backwards, okay? My hands, for now, hands can be open or closed, but for now, we're going to do a closed-handed stance because we're going to be working on closed-handed strikes today. So a closed hand, if you take your fingers tight, roll it, and use your thumb like a piece of duct tape to hold your fingers down. That's what I want to see. Okay? Nice tight hands. Now, staggered, 50-50 weight distribution. My elbow should be pointing down. Okay? The position of my hands, I want them high enough that if I take my thumbs, I should be able to touch my cheekbones. Okay? That's how I want my hands, to make sure I'm protecting my chin. And my arms, when I bring my elbows in, I'm using my arms to protect my ribs as well as to load my punch, because all my strikes are going to come from here. So if you look at the right hand dominant or right-handed fighting stance, it should look like this from the front position, okay? Here it is from the side position, here. And if you notice, if you can zoom in on my foot, we're going to talk about a little bit about how my heels come off the ground when I punch. I like to keep my rear heel off the ground in my stance. This allows me to get ready to push forward, as well as if I rotate off my front foot, it's going to sink my weight. Okay, we'll talk about that as well. Okay, so that's the first step, is the basic right-handed fighting stance. So, again, I talked about staggered feet. If my feet are in line, okay, this makes it very difficult, although it's good defensively, hard to hit my targets, but it makes it very hard to throw anything off the rear without having to adjust. So the concept that I like to teach is my fighting stance should allow me to move in any direction at any time, as well as be able to throw any technique I want, whether it's an offensive technique or a defensive technique, from my lead or rear, hands or feet, without having to adjust. That's what we want, that one stance. Now, with that being said, we're going to move on to the first of the closed hand strikes. So, first one we're going to do is a straight right, okay? Again, from my right-handed fighting stance, hands are up, elbows are down. So the important things to note on this is when I throw my rear hand, my left hand is going to stay up, glued to my chin, always protect. Okay, we don't teach hand down. So it's typical boxing position. The other thing I want you to note is my hip and shoulder always work together. Okay, meaning if I'm throwing something off the rear, my rear shoulder and rear hip both have to turn, and they have to turn in unison. And last but not least, as I mentioned before, I'm going to be pushing, if you can zoom in on that foot again, when I throw my straight right, I'm pushing off the ball of my foot, so that heel is coming up even higher off the ground, and I'm pushing forward. Notice my knee, I'm driving forward, I'm not buckling the knee, okay, because I want my power to go forward. Okay, with that, I'll demonstrate a couple of straight rights from a right-handed fighting stance. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good, so if you're watching this at home and you want to get a little bit of a workout, what I suggest you do is do 2 sets of 10 reps, straight rights in the air. 2 sets of 10 reps. For any of my students, if you have pads at home, and you're trapped in the house with mom and dad right now, I'm sure they'd be happy to help you and hold the pads for you, focus pads. Next strike is off the lead hand. So a lead hand closed-handed strike is what we call jab, just like in boxing, okay? The rule is the same. Shoulder, hip must work together, okay? So when I throw my lead jab, if you can zoom in on my front foot there, when I throw my lead jab, same rule applies. I'm going to pivot off that front. Ball of my foot, again, not buckling, pivoting, just enough to drive. And if you notice, shoulder and hip work together, okay? Shoulder, hip work together. So let's work jabs from the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, if you're at home, if you want to break it up into a workout, do 2 sets of 10 jabs from the right, okay? Now, if I put the two together, and again, we drill these basic combinations all the time in the dojo, a jab straight combination or a boxing 1-2 punch. Now this is going to allow me to twist my hips and shift my weight, because one strike will actually set up the second strike. So if I throw my jab off the lead, my lead foot turns, strike comes out. Now notice when I turn, my weight is now shifted onto my back leg when I complete the full extension. The weight's on the back leg. This allows me very easily to drive off that back leg and follow, boom, with my straight right. So in slow motion, a jab straight combination. 1, 2, from a side angle. 1, 2. Okay? So a quick set of a jab straight combination is going to look like this. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, again, if you're doing it for a little bit of fitness, do 2 sets of 10 jab straight combinations in the air, or if you have someone to hold the pad for you, by all means. Okay, next position, we're going to work our lead hook. So here's the deal. If you noticed, my jab straights, when I have my hands up, elbows are down, my hands never went outside of my shoulders. So let me say that again. My hands never came outside of my shoulders. My hands stayed within my shoulders, because the second I flare my elbow out, it's very weak. Okay, this way allows me, my body to stay behind the strike. Even with the hook, the rule applies. My hands stay inside my shoulders. Now for a hook, I'm changing the direction of my attack. I'm not coming linear anymore, I'm gonna come circular. Even though my elbow flares out, my hand, if you watch my hand when I throw a hook, still stays inside my shoulder. Okay, so what am I doing? Let's break it down. In dojo, I always like to break it down, especially for beginners, into a two-part hook. Count of one, from my fighting stance. Everything's done from my fighting stance. Elbow comes up first. Boom, my forearm's gonna be parallel to the ground. I see a lot of people argue between a vertical fist or a downward palm on the hook. I tend to throw it with a vertical. See what works for you. I teach my students with a vertical. So 2 count hook is gonna be elbows up on 1. Count of 2, shoulder, hip, foot pivots together. Boom, and I'm gonna stop just past my chin. Okay, this is no longer a hook. If I extend it, it becomes a straight left in this direction. So my eyes are forward, elbow comes up, I turn the hook. We'll do 3 of them in a 2 count position, and then I'll show you 5 as one motion. So 2 counts, elbow comes up, 1, 2, return, 1, 2, return, 1, 2, return. Now if I'm one motion, again following the rule, hand stays inside my shoulder. I want my energy projecting this way. I'm pushing. If you can zoom in on my lead foot, please. When I throw my hook, my lead foot pivots and I turn, pushing my energy in the same direction as my strike. So here's a few hooks in one motion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. So again, if you're doing it for get a little bit of an exercise, 2 sets of 10 hooks, and then we'll start to put some combinations together. Okay. So last, 2 more strikes I'd like to show today. Next one being the uppercut. So I see a lot of variations on how an uppercut is taught. Again, main rule is everything is done from the fighting stance. Okay. 50-50 weight distribution, knees bent, elbows down, hands up high enough where my thumbs can touch my cheekbones. Here's where I want to be. Okay? On my hook, what I don't want to do is I don't want to bring this hand down. In the dojo, we call this we don't want to do a big ice cream scoop, okay, because now I'm vulnerable. I want to be able to fire and protect my chin at all times, or for as long as possible before I fire the strike. So on a hook, the way I like to teach it is I change the angle of my shoulders, okay? When I threw jab and straight, my shoulders stayed on an even plane, it just rotated. But now when I throw my hook, watch what's gonna happen. I'm gonna dip my right shoulder, boom, okay? When I dip my right shoulder, this allows me to load the punch without dropping my hand, okay? And if you zoom in on, or let's get a full shot first if you would. When I turn my shoulder, I'm gonna load my rear leg. Knees are bent, I dip the shoulder, load the leg. Now, my power is coming not just from my upper body, but from my lower body, as well as all strikes should be. We should be using upper body and lower body together. That's why the shoulder and the hip working in unison is very, very important. So a 2 count hook, 2 count uppercut would look like this. Count of 1, I'm gonna dip the shoulder, load the leg. Count of 2, I'm gonna fire using my leg. I'm twisting, but I'm pushing off that leg, and pop, and I'm gonna stop just past my chin. This is not an uppercut. Okay, we're gonna stop it, pop, penetrate, and pull it back. So from here, 2 count, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Okay? 1 count uppercut, it becomes one motion. Again, be very careful. Don't buckle the knee. Okay? Twist and drive. Okay? Don't buckle the knee, twist and drive. So from here, uppercut. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? Again, if you're working it to get a little bit of fitness exercise, get your reps in. Give me 2 sets of 10. Okay, if you have the pads, have someone hold for you. Okay. Last techniques I want to show is a cross. Okay, so the difference between a straight right, and I know some people teach it differently, and that's fine. Again, this is my interpretation of the system, and not only how I was taught, but how I've evolved it over the years. So cross, the difference between a straight right and a cross is, as we talk about in the dojo, cross crosses my center line. Straight right comes out and lands at my center line. Okay, a cross is going to cut across my center line. Okay, here's a straight right, here's a right cross. Boom, here. Again, hips are turning. Now on the right cross, there's nothing wrong with if you want to open up a little bit as you punch to allow the hip to turn even more. Where on the straight right, I don't have to do that little adjustment step on here. Okay, so again, on the right cross, elbow stays down. I like to teach it as a vertical fist, whereas a straight right, I start to rotate, palm down. So from here, elbow down, right cross. I'm going to open my foot a little bit, turn the hip, out, and back. Okay, so we'll do 3 slow. 1, 2, 3. Quicker. Okay, again, get a set of 10 from the right. Putting it together as a combination, I could do a lead cross, rear cross. So again, jab straight comes down the middle, lead cross crosses my center, I turn, and I turn. Again, a little bit of a foot adjustment may be needed to max out the impact. So combination throwing a lead cross, rear cross, from here, slowly, 1, 2. Notice hips and shoulders work together. One hand goes out, the other hand still protects. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, if Matthew, if we can have it back up again, just so you can really see the directional difference in the straight right and the right cross. So if Matthew was to throw a straight right, I'm going to hold the pad here, don't hit yet. I'm going to hold the pad directly in front of him. Here's the straight right. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. If I were to throw a right, have him throw a right cross, I'm now going to adjust the pad on an angle. Here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. If you were to throw a jab straight, again, linear, coming right down the center line, both strikes would be coming to the same pad. A jab straight. On 1, 2. Ready? 1. Hands up. 2, 3, 4. Go. If I had him throw a lead cross, rear cross, 2 different pads. Here's the lead cross, pop. Here's the rear cross. Boom. Okay? 1 count, lead rear. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pop. 6. Good job. Excellent. All right. Again, if you could just zoom in this one more time. Again, this is the first video representing the American Vadha Kempo Academy. My email address is here if you need to reach me with any questions or comments. Again, this is done with the intent of having my students stay involved, okay, stay active with the martial arts during this time. So if you're one of my students, besides this, you guys know the drills you should be going over. We're going to be doing them in other videos that are upcoming. But make sure you're doing your stretches. Make sure you're doing your kata. Because eventually, you know, this too shall pass, as we like to say. And if things get back to normal, you know, hopefully the dojo opens up again and we're back in stride. When I say hopefully, I mean hopefully sooner rather than later. So I want you guys to be back in stride. I want to be, there's going to be, you know, belt tests this year and things like that. So I don't want this to interfere with that. Okay. Again, if someone's watching this that's new to the system, don't do anything that you're not fit or able to do. You know, make sure you're cleared health-wise before you engage in any physical activity. But everyone out there, stay safe. Okay. Wishing you and your families all the best on these difficult times. Okay. Thank you.